Coming up on Arirang News. South Korea is on alert as heavy snow grips the nation, causing widespread commuting chaos, accidents, and damage. Authorities are coming up with measures to keep people safe. Amid the spike in heating bills, South Korea's presidential office plans to double energy vouchers and gas price discounts for low-income households. Lawmakers are also suggesting measures to ease the pressure on them. The South Korean economy recorded a first contraction since the second quarter of 2020, when the pandemic began to take its toll on the country. And the United Nations forecasts the world economy to see one of its lowest growth rates in decades this year. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in South Korea, and thank you for joining us on Arirang News. We begin with our top story. Following a fierce cold wave the past couple of days, heavy snowfall gripped most of the country today, causing accidents out on the roads, flight cancellations, and water pipe malfunctions. The whole nation has been alert, with authorities deploying additional measures to keep citizens safe. Kim Mo-kyun starts us off.
Snow began piling up from the early morning hours of Thursday in many parts of South Korea. The Korean Meteorological Administration issued heavy snowfall advisories in parts of Gyeonggi-do, Gangwon, and Chungcheong provinces, with some areas seeing up to 9 centimeters of snow. The capital Seoul saw more than 4 centimeters, though the situation seems to be getting better. The sudden snowfall caused disruption to transport, impacting people heading to work during rush hours. Many had to drive extra slowly amid continuing efforts of accidents on the slippery roads. Meanwhile, as of 2 p.m., at least 3 flights have been canceled and 175 delayed at Gimpo and Incheon airports. Some 110 national park trails have also been closed for safety reasons. At least 524 cases of frozen water meters have been reported in Incheon and Seoul, and 16 water pipes have been frozen in Gyeonggi-do province. Amid the array of incidents, the Ministry of Interior and Safety issued a Level 1 response, the lowest of its 3-level system for action to be taken during a natural disaster. It has also raised the alert level from interest to caution. Authorities in Seoul have dispatched some 9,000 people since Wednesday night to clear snow from the roads. Public transport services have also been increased. Subways and city buses are operating at a more frequent rate and for 30 minutes longer during the morning and evening rush hours. Such measures could stay for a couple more days, as the weather agency expects southern areas of Jeolla, Chungcheong, and Gyeongsang provinces to see snowfall until Friday evening. Once the snow comes to a stop, the whole nation is set to combat another fierce cold wave again until the weekend. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
Many households across the nation are worried about their energy bills this winter. Seoul's top office responds with energy vouchers and gas price discounts, and so are lawmakers with measures to ease the burden. Our National Assembly correspondent Han Sung-woo has the details.
In response to surging heating costs this winter, the South Korean government has proposed an increase in energy vouchers and discounts on gas for the socioeconomically vulnerable. The Yongsan Presidential Office unveiled the plan on Thursday, citing what it referred to as an unavoidable rise in energy costs, and vowed to minimize the burden of energy bills on the people.
The reason heating costs have been rising is because rates have been held artificially low the past few years, despite conditions overseas demanding an increase. Plus, international prices for natural gas have soared more than tenfold since the second half of 2021 compared to the first quarter of that year.
Senior Presidential Secretary for Economic Affairs Choi Sang-mok explained, however, that South Korea's rates are still relatively low, mentioning that the United States, the United Kingdom, and Germany all raised gas prices for households last year by roughly threefold from the year before. Under the plan, South Korea will temporarily double the value of energy vouchers already provided to 1.17 million households to 304,000 won per home, or about $250. The state-run Korea Gas Corporation, meanwhile, will double the discount given to 1.6 million homes to as much as 72,000 won, or about $60. The ruling People Power Party and the main opposition Democratic Party of Korea have been trading blame over the burden that'll be borne by ordinary households.
What we're seeing is the people and the current government suffering from the consequences of the previous Moon Jae-in administration's energy populism disaster.
Considering the war in Ukraine and the current economic situation, it was largely predicted that heating costs would surge. But the Yoon Suk-yeol administration did not prepare adequately and is instead blaming others.
DP leader Lee Jae-myung has further called for some $5.8 billion in handouts to help with energy bills and has proposed a windfall tax on energy companies to pay for it. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News.
Seoul's top nuclear negotiator Kim Gun today met with Massimo Apparo, a senior official from the International Atomic Energy Agency, as part of efforts to strengthen cooperation and completely denuclearize North Korea. Kim stressed the need to raise awareness to the international community of North Korea's continued manufacturing of nuclear materials. He called for a more proactive role and a strong message from the IAEA if North Korea conducts its 7th nuclear test. Apparo said he shared Kim's concerns, adding that the agency is keeping close tabs on the North's movement and is maintaining a constant readiness. The two sides vowed to continue to closely communicate and cooperate to bring peace to the Korean Peninsula. The United Nations Command has concluded that both South and North Korea breached the armistice agreement when they sent drones into each other's airspace last month. Seoul had reacted to Pyongyang sending 5 drones across the border, but says doing so was part of its right to self-defense. Bae Eun-ji has more.
On December 26th, 5 North Korean drones crossed the MDL, or military demarcation line, before returning to the north. One of them flew as far as South Korea's capital city of Seoul, despite the South's military firing around 100 rounds to shoot them down. In response, South Korea sent reconnaissance assets of its own, including RQ-101 drones, near the MDL and north of the border. After conducting a special investigation on last month's incident, the United Nations Command on Thursday concluded that both Koreas breached their armistice agreement. But it added that South Korea's attempts to neutralize the North Korean aircraft when they were in South's territory were in compliance with it. But Seoul's defense ministry responded by saying that the sending of its drones north of the border was part of its right to self-defense, and stressed that this is not restricted by the armistice. Meanwhile, at a parliamentary session on Thursday regarding the drone incursion, Seoul's military and the defense ministry explained that the North appears to have filmed parts of South Korea, but said it would not have been able to film the Yongsan area where the presidential office is located.
We don't think what they have filmed would be a threat to our national security.
To prevent this from happening again, an official from South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff told reporters earlier in the day that the military will bolster its anti-drone response and hold regular training. The official added the military had initially not deemed the incursion as an emergency situation at the time due to, quote, inadequate decision-making and weaknesses in situational reporting, which delayed an effective response. Bae Eun-ji, Arirang News.
The United Nations expects the global economy to see one of its lowest growth rates in decades this year, of an expansion of just under 2%. Lee Kyung-eun has more.
High inflation, rate hikes, and geopolitical conflicts. Senior economists from the UN forecast that these complex crises will slow global growth to 1.9% this year. That marks a sharp decline from 3% in 2022. They note it will be one of the lowest growth rates in recent decades, with the exception of during the 2008 financial crisis and at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic 2 years ago, they saw minus 3.3%. The growth rate is expected to rise moderately to 2.7% next year. The forecast is in line with a World Bank projection made earlier this month. They revised down the global growth rate to 1.7%, a drop of more than 1 full percentage point from its previous forecast 6 months ago. Citing weakening domestic consumption and investment, one senior UN economist says several countries will see a mild recession. Such an outcome will be most notably seen in the developed countries, like the US and the EU, whose growth projections, according to the UN, are 0.4% and 0.2% respectively. The agency projects South Korea's economy to expand by 2%, Japan by 1.5%, and China by 4.8%. Despite lifting its strict zero COVID-19 policy, the projection is still far lower than the 6% range seen in China in the years before COVID-19. This is in part as a result of a virus resurgence following the easing of restrictions. On a brighter note, global inflation, which reached its highest figure of about 9% in decades in 2022, will slightly dip, but will remain at a concerning level of 6.5%. 이경은, 아리랑 뉴스.
The South Korean economy contracts in the fourth quarter last year. Scrambling finance officials prepare greater support for the country's exporters. Shin Se-byuk has the details.
South Korea's gross domestic product shrank 0.4% on quarter in Q4 last year. This is according to data from the Bank of Korea released on Thursday. This also marks the first fall since the second quarter of 2020, when the country was hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. The contraction was mainly due to sluggish private consumption and exports. Exports fell by 5.8% on falling global demand for chips and chemical products. Private consumption fell by 0.4% as spending on goods such as clothing and services decreased. As for the whole year, the estimate shows the country's GDP grew 2.6% last year, posting growth for the second consecutive year, as was expected by the central bank. However, growth in 2022 slowed, down from a 4.1% jump a year earlier. Meanwhile, in an emergency economic meeting on Thursday, Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho played down the green figures, calling them part of a global trend. Chu stressed that he expects the economy to grow in the first quarter of this year, citing China's resumption of economic activities following the scrapping of its strict zero-COVID policy. He added that South Korea is expected to struggle in the first half of 2023 due to the global economic slowdown, but will likely see a gradual recovery later in the year on the back of a chip industry rebound. The finance minister also pledged support worth some 340 trillion won, or around $276 billion, to boost exports and investment. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
Consumers in South Korea apparently think inflation is going to stay high through at least the end of this year. A survey conducted this month by the Bank of Korea on roughly 2,300 households shows the average expected inflation rate for the next 12 months is 3.9%. That's an increase from the expectation a month earlier of 0.1 of a percentage point. 3/4 of the surveyed households said they think inflation will be led by higher utility bills. The central bank also attributed the increase to an expected hike in public transportation fares in the first half of this year. Despite the sluggish global economy, South Korea's Hyundai Motor Company's earnings in 2022 were at an all-time high. The company's operating profit last year stood at around $8 billion, up 47% on year. Hyundai also logged sales of more than $115 billion last year, also a record high and a 21% spike compared to the previous year. Hyundai attributed the earnings surprise to strong sales of its high-value cars within the country and eco-friendly cars abroad. It also said production increased as the shortage of parts was gradually resolved. The strong U.S. dollars was another contributing factor as the company relies heavily on exports. The total number of eco-friendly vehicles registered in South Korea last year exceeded 1.59 million. That's an increase of 37% on year. The Transport Ministry said Thursday that eco-friendly vehicles now account for 6.2% of the country's total of 25.5 million. Of the ones that are eco-friendly, registration of electric vehicles increased the most, 68% compared to a year earlier. Eco-friendly vehicles include all-electric, hydrogen fuel cell electric, plug-in hybrid, and gasoline hybrid models. Korean farmers grow a kind of extra-large strawberry known as the Kingsberry, known for not only bigger but sweeter than ordinary strawberries. Recently, South Korea's agricultural agency found several ways to improve their quality and boost exports of them. Jo Sung-min has more.
These strawberries grown in Korea are called Kingsberries. They're even bigger than an egg and have a higher Brix level than the typical strawberry you find in the store. The Brix level indicates a fruit sweetness. Growing Kingsberries is hard because they're prone to a variety of fungal diseases like powdery mildew, so a group of local scientists recently came up with a way to boost their yields. Their solution is to spray the strawberry leaves with the green freshwater algae called chlorella. Chlorella acts as a protective shield that fends off pests, making the berries much firmer and sweeter.
We improved the strawberries' hardness and sugar level and got their leaves to grow thicker. It's also much less likely they are exposed to banned agricultural substances.
Another way of improving quality is the use of beehives. Farmers found that bees naturally pollinate the strawberry seeds when they land on flowers. They say this method reduces the likelihood of them having defects compared to when the seeds are pollinated manually. They also developed a new packaging method for shipping the strawberries abroad. The fruits are packaged in a sturdier container made by a 3D printer and a latex material. This protects the berries from getting mushy and preserves their firm texture while in transit.
Our studies were based on Kingsberries that got soft too easily. We'll see whether we can apply this method to our fruits.
South Korea's agricultural agency says these methods have driven exports of Kingsberries up 90% now that they've started to be shipped to the US and Thailand. Jo Sung-min, Arirang News.
Traditionally, subscription services referred mostly to newspapers and magazines, but today it's more than that. People now subscribe to video content, music streaming platforms, computer software, and even cars. Lee Dae-yeon tells us more about today's subscription economy.
The term subscription economy might be unfamiliar to some, but many people have used it at least once.
I subscribe to a salad delivery service. It's convenient when I'm busy and can't go to a store.
I'm planning to get chicken breasts delivered regularly. Subscription services are cheaper, and I get it delivered to my door by the time it runs out.
The subscription economy is a growing business landscape that involves selling recurring subscriptions to consumers in exchange for access to a product or service over time. The global investment bank and financial services firm Credit Suisse says the subscription economy market size grew to $530 billion in 2020 from $420 billion in 2015. And it's expected that 75% of global manufacturing companies will provide this service this year. It's also expanding into a variety of industries in the current era of digital transformation. Amazon on Wednesday started a subscription service that allows premium members in the U.S. to purchase multiple medications for a flat fee of $5 a month, the e-commerce giant's latest foray into healthcare. Car companies, too, are getting in on the act as Hyundai Motor introduced a program in South Korea that allows customers access to a car with a monthly subscription of a little over $800. A similar service is available in other countries such as Spain and the UK. It's similar to a lease except users can opt out. And now the service has adopted AI technology to provide better choices for consumers. For example, some video subscription services provide recommended videos based on user history. It's expanding into the product delivery service too, where it recommends books or drinks using an algorithm based on a customer's gender and age. Despite the development in technology, however, one expert says businesses should brace for difficulties too.
As the economic slowdown continues, consumers tend to tighten their purse strings. The first thing they would likely do is cut their recurring payments for some subscriptions. But still, it's important for companies to adopt the subscription system in the long term, as the system is expanding into essential products and services.
She added letting consumers easily and conveniently cancel their subscriptions in this situation can be a good strategy that can lead to a positive corporate image, keeping consumers coming back in the future. Lee Dae-yeon, Arirang News.
The number of births in South Korea has declined yet again, falling to a new low for the month of November. And with the number of births outpaced by deaths, there was a natural decline in the population for the 37th consecutive month. According to Statistics Korea, the number of babies born last November came to a little under 19,000 for an on-year decline of 4.3%. This is the lowest figure on record for the month of November. The number of deaths jumped a little over 6% on-year to some 30,000. It's another record high for November due to the aging population and deaths related to COVID. From January through November, the population fell by an all-time high for the period of some 107,000. The Indian Embassy in Seoul held an event on Thursday to celebrate the 74th Republic Day of India, one of the country's biggest national events. Around 100 people from the Indian community, along with embassy workers and their families, participated in the event. A national flag hoisting ceremony took place at the main Chancery building, followed by the unfurling of the flag by the Ambassador of India, Amit Kumar, and the singing of the national anthem. The ambassador stressed the importance of the South Korea-India relationship this year, as December marks the 50th anniversary of establishing diplomatic ties.
The forecast calls for more snowfall accumulations for the south of the country. For Jeollado provinces, heavy snowfall of up to 7 centimeters are expected. Mountainous regions of Jeju Island will see up to 10 centimeters. Most of the snow will taper off for central regions overnight. For the Seoul metropolitan area, about 1 to 5 centimeters of snowfall will be coming and going. Cold wave conditions will make a return again tomorrow. Most regions will see temperatures staying in the minus range for the entire day. While most of the snowfall will taper off tomorrow daytime, frost and ice will stay on the roads for the time being. This is due to cold winds and freezing temperatures that are forecast to prevail for the next few days. Drivers are urged to use extra caution. Tomorrow, Seoul will be starting off at minus 9 degrees Celsius and Daegu at minus 4 degrees. Daily highs in Seoul will get up to minus 5, Gwangju minus 1, and Daegu will be reaching 0 degrees Celsius. Conditions will stay frigid until this weekend, so make sure to bundle up extra warm. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
That brings us to the end of the newscast. Thank you for staying with us. We'll be back with the most up-to-date news tomorrow. Hope everyone stays warm and safe. Take care.
week, NAPD will meet with the first ambassador of Slovenia to Korea, Jurnej Miller, to hear about Slovenia's charm and the current